God wouldn't put you through anything that you couldn't handle. Don't let fear stop you from pursuing your dreams. Don't let fear stop you from pursuing your purpose. And everything you want is on the other side of fear. Go put yourself in situations that scare you. Go put yourself outside of your comfort zone, and you'll realize that all those things that you were scared of or fearful generally don't ever come to fruition. So, welcome to Street Leadership, where grit meets grace and ambition meets action. I'm your host, Ryan Goldman, diving deep into the stories that shape today's leaders. Get ready to be inspired, challenged, and transformed. Let's lead the way together. Welcome to the Street Leadership Podcast with myself, Ryan Goldman. Today I wanted to talk to you guys just a little bit about fear. And I had this really unique experience over the last week where being a Tony Robbins Platinum partner, I had the opportunity to go to New Zealand with my Platinum family. And one of the experiences that they put us through while it was an adventure trip to New Zealand. So we're in Queenstown, New Zealand, which is known as the adventure capital of the world. And one of the experiences that they put us through was to go to a bungee jump experience. And I have always been afraid of heights, and I think a lot of people probably share that same fear. And it was a really really unique and interesting experience, and probably one of the more transformative experiences I've had in my life because of kind of the circumstance that happened and the meaning that I attached to it. But so we get to this place, and it's one of the highest points or the highest bungee jump in New Zealand. I don't remember exactly how big of a jump it was, but you take this little contraption that takes you to the middle of this canyon, and you're basically like in this floating house, that's being hung by kind of like two large pieces of rope on each side. And you're in the middle of this canyon, and you kind of see like a little river below you, and you're surrounded by really this beautiful scenery. You're extremely extremely high up, and it was raining, it was cold. It's actually wintertime in New Zealand right now, and you're literally like this is just an unnatural experience to jump from any sort of high point, and so there's a certain level of fear that's obviously attached to that. I recognize that I have a lot of fear, and so for me, what I've noticed is that like the longer that I delay doing something, the harder it becomes. So what I did was I volunteered to be one of the first people to go. The simple fact of like, okay, if I'm going to do this, let me get it over with, rather than getting in my head about it and making it that much worse. I love this quote that a coward dies 1,000 deaths, and the courageous only one. And what that kind of says is when we're experiencing all of like these worst case scenarios in our mind, it makes it a lot more challenging for us. Okay, and the reality is most of those fears and most of those things never come to fruition, but they do feel real in our mind, and it makes things really really hard. So I know this about myself, and so I volunteered to be one of the first to go. And when you get to the edge and you're looking down into the abyss, it's a pretty humbling experience. And for me, it was really like looking fear in the face. And you're standing there, and because it was so windy, they basically were like, you have to wait for us to count down, and we'll tell you when you have to jump. So it's not like you just walk to the edge and you jump. Like you walk to the edge, and then you're standing at the edge, just looking into the abyss, and into this valley, just waiting, right? Waiting for the wind to kind of die down, or for it to be the perfect time. And then of course out of nowhere, it's 5 4 3 2 1, and you just jump. And on my through my experience of doing that, it was one of the most profound experiences I had. And so there was a bungee jump, there was a swing, and a catapult, which was like a human catapult. But what I realized in doing those three things was that I've allowed fear to stop me from so many things in my life, right? And I almost let fear stop me from doing that. It's like it would have just been a lot easier to be like, I don't need to bungee jump, I don't need to do this. This is, I'm cool on that. Which is probably what I would have gone through my entire life doing if I hadn't been kind of in an environment where everybody around me is doing it, and so I didn't really have any other option but to do it, or to kind of cower it out of it, and I wasn't going to do that. So but through my experience, and when I jumped down, I had this realization of like, man, I have let fear stop me from so many things in my life. Like, for example, even this podcast, it took me 9 months to get started with this podcast out of fear, right? And whether it's fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of being judged, fear of success, fear of what other people might think, all of these things are things I think that all of us deal with on a day-to-day basis. And what I came to realize in my experience was that fear is normal, right? When you're standing at the edge, it's, to not have fear would be like irrational, right? I mean, you're standing at the edge of 200 meters or whatever it is, looking down, and it's a very scary experience. But to have courage doesn't mean that you don't have fear. And to have courage means that even with that fear, even experiencing that fear, I'm going to do it anyways. And so for me, that was kind of like, it was a breakthrough moment for me in realizing, you know what, things can scare me. Things can be fearful. I might have these fears of what if it doesn't work out, or fear of failure, but that doesn't have to stop me from taking action. And most of the time, the fears that we have, like the fears of it not working out, or in this case, the fear of falling to your death, those things don't ever happen, right? And but it's easier to just not take any action rather than to actually put ourselves through the experience and find out for ourselves. But as I was getting pulled up, I made this commitment to myself that I will never let fear get in the way of me pursuing my dreams and goals again. And it was a really, really profound experience for me, coming to that realization, because all of us have fears, and fear is a normal thing. I mean, like fear comes from kind of our biological evolution, right? Of, we used to be, hunters and gatherers, and we had to be fearful of, if a lion was chasing us, we need to start running. Now, a lot of times those fears are not as justified as they were, back then. Now we're feared of talking in public because we're going to be judged, right? Not necessarily like a fear of death. And so fear kills more dreams than failure ever has. And that's the reality, right? Like, most people will avoid putting them in situations just to avoid that fear of failure, or fear of being judged, or fear of what other people might think, rather than just experiencing it and finding out, like, okay, maybe it doesn't work out, right? But usually people regret the things that they didn't do, not the things that they did do and failed at. So it's always better to just put yourself on the other side of fear, and understand that fear is normal for everybody. It's not unique to you. We all have the same fears, whether it's, fear of public speaking, fear of, heights, fear of, being judged, or whatever it is. But we got to be able to recognize, like when do these patterns of fear show up in our life? And once again, it's nothing wrong with having fear, but are you going to let fear stop you? And that's when it becomes a problem, is when you let fear get in the way of you pursuing your dreams and goals. And that's what I recognize for myself, is like, man, I've not done a lot of things just out of my own insecurities, and I'm sure a lot of you could probably relate to that, of like, man, we could be living a higher purpose or doing more in our lives if we weren't worried about the opinions of others, or what other people might say or think or do. And so we got to break those patterns, right? And we have to overcome fear, and not let fear be this thing that stops us, right? And like I said, for me, it was realizing, we have to find courage, and courage is something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially since that experience. Of courage is not the absence of fear. It doesn't mean that fear doesn't exist. Fear will always exist. Fear will always be there, but having courage means that you're just gonna do it anyways. And if you're willing to do it anyways, and you step into that discomfort, or out of your comfort zone, that's when you start to see all of the rewards, right? And you just have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And a lot of times it comes from like a sense of trying to control things and control outcomes. And when you step into the fear or the unknown, like, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen, right? But having faith over fear, right? And that was one of the things too. When I got to the edge, all I could think was, I was like, God's got me, and so for me, it was really taking a leap of faith, literally, and and giving up fear, right? And leaning more into faith, right? Choosing faith over fear. And that's what will allow you to really start walking in your purpose, right? Is when you give up those fears and those insecurities and just start walking in courage. And courage is that secret weapon that conquers fear, and having faith that everything's going to work out and you're here for a reason. And God wouldn't put you through anything that you couldn't handle, and so don't let fear stop you from pursuing your dreams. Don't let fear stop you from pursuing your purpose. You want is on the other side of fear. So I hope somebody can relate to that message. Like I said, it was a pretty profound experience for me. Go put yourself in situations that scare you. Go put yourself outside of your comfort zone, and you'll realize that all those things that you were scared of or fearful generally don't ever come to fruition. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next one.